Rev up your engines! All right, this guy just bought this van a month ago for $1,200. Doesn't know the mileage because none of that stuff works. But the seller said, oh, you just need these two sensors for the cam and the crank and that'll fix the whole thing. Not really. To begin with, if you ever get codes that said you need a cam and a crank sensor together, odds are it's not the sensor. It's that the timing chain is stretched. This is a V6 Ford engine, has a timing chain. When the chain stretches, the data between these two sensors, the crank and the cam, gets weird and it'll trip codes because the computer's confused. And it's not that the sensors are bad. It's that the timing chain has been stretched. One, I'd never even put these on to begin with as a guess because if it needed both of these, odds are it needs a timing chain, not these. First thing I did was hook up my fancy scan tool. It had codes for low voltage and the IMRC, the intake manifold runner controlled, inside the engine. It had no codes for crank or cam sensor anyway. Started to wonder for one reason. Low voltage, the intake manifold runner. Inside here, there's a runner that lets the intake manifold either be a long distance or a short distance for power and gas mileage. And those things break all the time on these. Now, since it had the intake manifold runner control code, you can test it with the machine. I pushed to test it and it says I can't test it because there's not enough voltage. So the first thing we're going to check is the battery and the alternator. You notice it has a new alternator on it. Does it work? Does it not? No one knows. The old tester on, just clamps right on. And what we want is the module and the battery tester. And here we go. Regular flooded battery. It's looking for floating electricity now. So there's no floating battery. There isn't some kind of a drain. This is a 650, so we'll put it on 650 amps. This little slider's kind of a pain to get exact. I would have never done it that way. I would have done it a different way. It's too hard to get it to 650, but we'll try. Kind of annoying that they make everything, this computer stuff, that's hard to get to. It goes one to the other. 645, that's close enough. Battery's 100%. The life is 93, 625. You can see that's new. You also see the alternator's new. So what we're going to do is start the car. Drain it does. Normal. So, we're not checking the diode ripple or the charging system, and that's working okay. That's not odd. Now 14.1 volts. You can see, before he bought it, they had put on a new alternator and battery. And those are both good. Now, it ran okay when he bought it, but now it's starting to run like crap. It won't shift out of gears. And it's got that intake manifold runner saying there's not enough voltage. So odds are there is an electronic problem either in the computer or in the wiring system or in the motor that runs the intake manifold runner control. As you can see, since the charging system itself is now normal, totally normal. See, it's got the code for the intake manifold runner control stuck at closed, and it is a charging system fault. And it's a misfire when it starts up the first 1,000 revolutions. Interesting thing about these, they're all related to the control module. Often the control module ground strap goes bad, so we're going to check that first. Could cause all the problems. The one thing you have to realize with this Ford, even though it's old, it's 2005, the PCM ultimately controls the charging system. You got a problem in that, you'll often get charging control problems. And the stupid thing is hidden in here. They often get wet and need to be regrounded. So let's check that first. PCM's hidden under this plastic crap, so we got to take all this garbage out of the way. You might think it keeps it sealed, but not really. Rain often gets in here and can short the thing out. It's a very stupid place to put a PCM. Take Toyotas. They always generally hide them inside the car where it's safe. Here's a stupid computer. You can see. Look at it. It's corroded. Water gets in there. What a stupid place to put a computer. Since we're working on a computer, before we do anything else, we're going to disconnect the stupid battery. We don't want to short it out. Take a terminal off. Move it out of the way so it can't touch anything. We're going to check the terminals. We're going to remove this. And we're also going to reground the computer. These Fords are notorious for having bad computer grounds. It's in there. Under the windshield, water gets in there, it intrudes, makes the stupid thing go bad, shorts it out. Hopefully regrounding it and cleaning it will fix it, because if not, it's going to need a new computer, and maybe more. Now this is 10 millimeters, so I can find where my wrench went. They're always falling down everywhere. We'll now remove it since it's not connected to the system anymore. It won't short anything out. That holds it on. Once you take it out, you can unplug it. Like I say, a really stupid place to put a computer, but that's Ford Motor Company for you. Now the first thing we're going to look are all these connecting pins. But you can see they are all crystal clean, shiny, and not corroded. There's nothing wrong with those. This here is the grounding wire. You can see it's a cheap little wire. We're going to make a new one. You need power, you need ground. You lose ground, it goes bananas. Plus, if you know anything about computers and cars, they use ground circuits to run just about everything. So the stupid little intake manifold runner, the low charging. That can all be because of that stupid ground wire. Now, one of the problems with the design is the ground for the computer goes to this plastic part. There's metal underneath it, but it's a stupid place. Right here on the fender, there's a nice metal fender washer. So we're going to run a new ground wire there. It's serious 10 gauge wire. This is one ground that is not going to go bad. It's really going to be bolted metal to metal, no plastic in between. They just cheapened out when they built these things. This is going to be a real ground wire. Solid. It's not going anywhere. You can see this thing is solid as can be. Now we'll connect it to the ground wire for the computer. Now you don't want to do a sloppy job, so get these good little wire clippers and slice this off and wrap it around the ground wire. Put the insulation off the ground wire. And you can see it's all wrapped around there, but don't stop there. We're going to solder it on too. Simple electric soldering iron plugs into 120 volts. I got my giant extension cord there. And what you do is heat the wire up first with the soldering gun. You got to get it nice and hot. Then you apply the solder. Just take your time and be sure to use electrical solder. You don't want to use solder that you use on radiators and stuff. You want electrical solder. Then you just solder it together. It'll be a nice clean connection. Now you can see I have the connection all coated. Then you want to seal it. A lot of guys will use that little plastic that goes over and you heat shrink the tubing and it seals it, but really you get good 3M tape that's waterproof. It works just as good. I like this 3M electrical tape. It's good tape. You'll pay a little bit more, but hey, it's going to last forever. You want to make it waterproof. Then we just plug this back in on the computer, main wiring harness to the ECM, and tighten it up with a 10mm. Oh, I finally found something right away. That's amazing. And don't forget to finish it with a socket and a ratchet because you don't want it getting loose. We know it seals it because it didn't get gooed up inside. So you want to get it nice and snug so everything's in there just right. Now realize this is a quick way of doing it. This is a $1,200 car because it's a Ford. It'll have electrical problems in the future too. You'll probably have to be taking it apart a lot from now on, as old as this thing is. And from my scan tool, the odometer doesn't work on the dash, but the scan tool says it's got like 265,000 miles on it, so things are worn. You know, they paid $1,200 for it. Here's the old crappy one. Here's the new ground wire. Much better and stronger. If the ground was bad, it could have damaged the computer. It might need a computer replacement. We're going to have to take it all apart again anyway, so we'll leave that as it is. Of course, don't forget to put the battery cable on, but if you don't, it won't hurt anything. The car just won't start. Then you have to go back and hook it up. As you can see, the guy that sold it to him put a battery and an alternator on, thinking that fixed the charging system. It didn't. It probably didn't even need them, but we'll see if this ground fixes the computer, since the computer also controls the charging system in this car. It could easily fix it. But of course, before we do that, we're going to hook up our computer and erase all the codes. So we'll turn the key on with the idiot lights on but the car not running, and we'll get to our computer here and we'll clear the trouble codes. Clear the trouble codes. Codes are erased. So let's read the trouble codes now. Are they really erased? They're erased. The only thing now is P1000. But that means that the onboard diagnostic system isn't completed readiness. And those always will trip on a Ford. When you reset the codes, it's got to reset the whole system, and the OBD system has to go through its readiness test. So we'll start up and run it and see what happens. So we'll take the $1,200 van for a road test, half an hour. But now the first thing I notice as we take off, kind of a wobble shift into second. Transmission is obviously worn. I mean, it's got like 265,000 miles on it. We'll see what happens with the floor. But it goes into passing gear okay. I can feel a little jiggle, but it's still working. Well, so far so good. There's no check engine lights on yet. And you step on the gas, it hesitates a little. You can see that transmission slipping like mad. It should not rev up that high. Well, obviously the transmission's wearing out. I mean, you buy a Ford van for $1,200, don't be surprised if the transmission is on its way out. If you baby it, it's okay, but when you floor it and it goes into the lower gear, look, it just goes bananas. And it shouldn't do that. So this is literally now a baby van. It may carry babies, but you should baby it while you drive it if you want it to last. There's no lights on. It ran fine, except for that transmission. It is on its way out. More money than this vehicle's worth, for sure. It is on its way out. I checked the fluid. It's full of fluid. The fluid's changed. Somebody probably changed it. It's just flat going out. Guy thought it was a charging system. It wasn't the system itself. It was the computer. Thought he needed sensors. He didn't. But the other thing we learned is be real leery of buying a $1,200 Ford used van that's got 265,000 miles on it. This transmission is going out. He told me it was slipping coming over here, and it's just on its last leg. It's going to cost a lot more money than this thing's worth to put another one in. The only cost effective would be a junkyard used transmission, and with these, the trannies always go out. It would be a gigantic gamble. You look at one of these vans, the tranny doesn't shift right, walk away. Don't even think about it. Now the fluid was full. If the fluid was low, yeah, that can make it shift back. But in this case, it goes fine in reverse, but forward it slips. That's internal wear. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.